Good morning. Today on Spotlight, an up-close look at how our Metro Detroit region is stacking up competitively with other U.S. regions. The Detroit Regional Partnership is a brand new organization headed up by President and CEO Barry Matherly. In his very first Spotlight interview, we'll seek to find out what agenda he has in store for his influential group of movers and shakers. And later on our Sunday morning program, Sandy Barua and Dennis Archer Jr. take us inside the 2020 Detroit Policy Conference. It's Sunday, January the 19th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Mr. Matherly, welcome to Spotlight.
Thank you.
I should say welcome to the region. You've been here just about a year.
About a year, yes.
Yeah. What's the biggest takeaway so far about this region?
You know, I actually got here and experienced the polar vortex early on.
Okay.
But what I think is we need to stop talking about the winter and talk about the amazing Michigan summers. It was the most gorgeous summer I've ever spent.
Is that right? Good.
Summer.
All right. And you have Virginia roots, also some Oklahoma roots.
Yep.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump into all this Detroit partnership.
Sure. Actually, I was born in Connecticut in the north, and then I've lived several different places. Most recently, I lived down in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then in Richmond, Virginia before coming here.
All right. So you got the pretty Blue Ridge Mountains.
That's right.
Passed in you. Yeah, pretty part of the country. Well, welcome to Spotlight and welcome to this region. How often do people confuse your new organization with the Downtown Detroit Partnership?
Sure. That happens all the time, and we get confused with a lot of different.
You got to pass out a lot of business cards
That's
and say
right.
the name's a little different.
That's right. And the big thing is we are a new organization. It is a new effort that this region has not had before on this scale. And so a lot of people are trying to figure out, not only are we not downtown, but are you just city? And really we're all 11 counties in Southeast Michigan.
All right. Why this new organization? We got a lot of organizations around here.
Yeah. Because we looked, and coming out of the recession, this area kind of lagged somewhat. It's been growing, and you've seen all kind of good signs of growth. But overall, compared to a lot of our neighbors, maybe up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, or other areas in the Midwest, we haven't been growing as strong as we need to. And so a lot of the business leaders in this region looked at other regions that were growing. And one of the things they had was a dedicated group just focused on growing the region and just waking up every day making sure that people had opportunity. So they decided they needed that here.
Does this mean that you're in concert or that you're in rivalry with our Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah.
Which is the Detroit Regional Chamber.
Yeah, also confusing on that end. No, we work with them. We're highly collaborative with the Chamber. Actually, Sandy sits on our board of directors.
All right, Sandy Barua, President and CEO.
Yes. And actually, the Chamber had a core staff of 4 people that did a program like this. And even when you start something new, there's always someone that paved the way for you.
Absolutely.
In this case, the Chamber paved the way for our organization.
So they welcomed you.
They did. And actually, that team, when last January, came over to be part of our team. So we actually have some of that Chamber team over with our team now working with us. So the Chamber helped launch us out of their space actually last year when we were just getting going. We had 6 months to create the organization, and so we're great partners and collaborators.
Jerry Anderson, is the name familiar to you?
He's my chair.
I've heard so many times, particularly Sandy Barua, say it's no longer cities versus cities, it's regions versus region. It's not Detroit versus Cleveland or Detroit versus Atlanta, it's this region versus those regions. True or false?
Absolutely true. Both of them are true. And that's one of the things here that's been very important about pulling this group together is we are a regional group. We have 11 counties, but within those there's 348 separate cities, towns, townships.
And all of them think they're king.
and they all want to do better, and they all want to grow. And so what we want to do is, instead of trying to kind of compete amongst ourselves, we want to compete against other regions, not only in the US, but globally, because we think we have a lot to offer here, and we think that we should be doing a lot better. And you mentioned Jerry, he's passionate about this region, and he's passionate about us being able to provide more opportunities for the people that live in this region.
So before we go into this first break, in a nutshell, what are the goals? When you look at your agenda and say, well, what is it that as an organization, a new organization, we want to accomplish?
Right. Our core missions are to market this region so people understand the opportunities, and then actually to bring new companies into this region from all over the world. And we need more job opportunities here.
And what's it going to take to bring those new companies? What are we perhaps not doing now that we need to be doing to make someone in Georgia or Oklahoma say, boy, I'm going to relocate, or I'm going to start up in this region versus somewhere else in the country?
Right. What we need to do is start telling all the positive stories, all the great things we've got going on in this region, and things that a lot of times other people are telling our story, and we're not telling it ourselves out to the business community. So our job is to make sure we get those positive messages out, and even things that we're not the best at, explaining how we could improve those here in the near future. So our job is to really get that message out, and then a big part of ours is traveling. We're all over the US, all over the globe, telling that story one-on-one with CEOs.
Excellent. All right, we're going to take a little break. Come back. I want to talk about what you view as perhaps some of our shortcomings, and a little bit more about you and your background and what you bring to this region. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Shortcomings. When you stepped into this region and started really looking at everything, if you had to make a column and say, all right, these are the problems, these are the hurdles this region has to overcome, what would they be?
I think one of the big ones is just having so many localities and so many divisions here.
Strong local government
Yes.
in this state, not just this region.
Right.
We are a strong local government state.
Right.
Some feel as though that's a strength. A lot of people feel as though that's a weakness.
Right. And there are strengths about doing that, about putting decisions closer to people and making local decisions. But when it comes to growing an economy, people live and work all over the region. And so your workforce, your assets, there's the international airport that's only in one community. There's colleges and universities that are only in so many communities. We all a lot of times work and live in other communities. So when it comes to economic development, it doesn't see these little divisions or even county divisions. It just sees one region. And so that's why, as an economic development effort, we need to think more regionally.
What about mobility and this digital age that we're in?
Yeah.
Are we up to snuff in this region?
So mobility is a big cluster of ours that we focus on. We see automotive mobility as two different clusters that we look at, that we recruit and we talk about. No doubt in automotive, we are number one in almost every category. In mobility, not so much. There are areas that we are very successful. There's areas that we need to do better. And there's a lot of effort going on now.
Certainly on regional transit, people say, particularly this region, that we're too dependent on our cars.
Yeah, people look, when you look at transit across the U.S. and you look at the Amazon proposal a lot of people talk about, that was a key metric of theirs. They wanted to look at regions where people could get around on regional transit systems. So that tells you a lot of these big corporate decisions do have a component when they're looking at a region to make sure there is some type of regional transit there.
This latest proposal with Wayne, City of Detroit, Wayne, Oakland, Washtenaw, not Macomb yet,
Right.
talking about trying to partner on regional transit and going to the legislature, trying to get everything they need from Lansing to be able to do that. Do you view that as a positive move for this region, or is it, well, if you don't have Macomb in there, then you know what, you're not moving in the right direction?
Sure. Our organization is not set up to be kind of a policy organization.
Okay, all right, stay out of that front.
So that's so we look at it from just purely what our companies need or what we're going to recruit. If you want to recruit an Amazon type project, then that's something you will need as part of the region. If that's something the region doesn't want to do or a community's not interested in, then it's not as needed. So one of the things that we make sure of in the region is that we are trying to do things that the whole region wants to come behind and benefit from. And how each county wants to be, that's still up to each county or each city or each township, in our opinion.
Does this organization give the CEOs a much bigger voice and what's to be now and in the future?
Sure. Well, we have a great organization. Our board isn't all filled out yet. We have 15 board members right now. But the nice thing about our organization is not only are the CEOs actively involved and very interested in making sure this is a better community and more opportunities for people, but the government sector is fully involved in this effort, and the nonprofit sector. We have a lot of foundations that are also supporting us, and actually LeJune Montgomery from Kellogg Foundation sits on our board. So we have a mix of public sector, private sector, and non-profit sector on the board.
Some years ago, then Governor Bill Milliken, the longest serving governor of this state, Republican, was talking with, I believe, Roman Gribbs, who was mayor of Detroit at that time, Democrat. And they were just starting to have conversations about maybe moving this region to some kind of regional government. Similar to what I told you I experienced in Davidson County in the Nashville area when I lived there in Tennessee, and Montgomery County in Maryland. That has a big footprint. Of course, that entire region, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, you have your various county governments. And a lot of people feel as though that's a better way of spending your dollar. Would that ever work for Michigan, given our history? And is that something that you see us needing to move toward as the dollar becomes more important in terms of how you spend it and how you spread it?
Sure. So in general, I've only been here a year. I don't know if I've got the best feeling for that. What I will say is if you create more combined government services or not, one of the things you can do is have efforts like ours, is that areas that people can all agree on. You got to think about our effort. We've got everywhere from Shiawassee and St. Clair, Lenawee, Monroe, Ann Arbor, all supporting one effort. And all these governments saying, okay, we're all willing to help put our time and invest in this group because we think it's a better way to collaborate together. So even if you don't actually try to merge, so to speak, them together, there are a lot of things we can do, like economic development, where we can work on a more collaborative scale and make that money go further.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
Barry Matherly, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank
Welcome
you.
your first time to Spotlight. We'll get you back.
I'd love to come back.
All right, and tell Jerry Anderson we said hi.
I will.
All right. And when Spotlight returns, we'll go to our downtown studio to talk to Sandy Barua and Dennis Archer Jr. We'll be right back. The Detroit Policy Conference that's coming up always precedes the annual Detroit Regional Conference that you have up on Mackinac. The focus this year is what?
So we're focusing on what do we need to do over the next decade. We just completed this last decade and we saw tremendous growth in the city of Detroit, across the Detroit region, and of course the state of Michigan. What do we need to do today and tomorrow to ensure that we have that same level of growth by 2030, and what are the pieces that are missing, such as our neighborhoods that still need more investment and attention?
Is that the biggest piece missing? Because downtown, when you certainly look out this window, downtown is doing pretty darn well. Midtown is doing well, but we're always hearing about the neighborhoods.
Yeah. Obviously, different neighborhoods are in different levels of development. I think one of the things that Mayor Duggan and his administration have done has had a great impact on removing blight, increasing home ownership. Home values in the city have really increased, but not everyone is participating yet. They don't have the job opportunities yet. Their neighborhoods haven't gotten to the point where they feel comfortable from a safety standpoint or an amenity standpoint. And we just have to understand that across the region and across the state, until more people are participating in the economic prosperity that some of us enjoy, we won't be successful.
At the Detroit Policy Conference, who do you hope to get your message to? Is this just to the movers and shakers, or does it go beyond that?
Yeah, the great thing about our Detroit Policy Conference is that it's really geared to a very broad audience, where its focus is that it's focused on Detroit and the broader region. The Mackinac Conference, it really focuses on the state. We bring in national speakers, but this is really targeted to issues that really matter to Detroiters and to people who live and work and play in the Detroit region.
All right. Not terribly long ago, I was in a conversation with someone, and they were talking about regions versus cities. But with this being focused on the city, how much do you get into a conversation about the region, or do you save that for when you get to Mackinac?
No, absolutely. No, we the Detroit Policy Conference, we encompass the entire region. We represent an 11-county region. We represent businesses across the 11-county region. A great partner organization of ours is the Detroit Regional Partnership. They have exactly the same footprint. And what our rule is that it does no good to move a business from Northville to Detroit or from Warren to Troy. That doesn't increase our employment base. That doesn't increase our educational attainment. All it does is it changes the commuting pattern.
Final question before we get Dennis Archer Jr. up here to talk about some of the nuts and bolts of the conference. The governor's coming up on her State of the State address. How much do you want her to focus on the city of Detroit and what's happening in Detroit, whether it's downtown, midtown, or the neighborhoods?
Well, so first of all, Governor Whitmer is a big champion of Detroit, and you look at who she selected to serve as her lieutenant governor, she selected a Detroiter, and a great one at that. So we know she's committed to the city of Detroit, and one of the things that we want to work on with her is regional transit, which is hugely important to the citizens of Detroit, because a lot of people who live in Detroit have jobs out in Troy or Livonia or Warren. We want to make sure they can get to those job opportunities.
All right, we're going to get Dennis Archer Jr. up here. He chaired the conference last year. Someone twisted his arm to do it a second year in a row, so we're going to find out about that. We'll be right back with Dennis Archer Jr. Stay with us. And welcome back, Dennis Archer Jr. He is the 2020 chair of the Detroit Policy Conference. He actually chaired this in 2019. How'd they twist your arm to do it one more year in a row?
Actually, Devin, who is responsible primarily as a staff member for the conference, at the conclusion of the conference last year, kind of whispered in my ear, would I be interested?
Right.
And obviously that could not happen without the blessing of the leadership with Sandy and Tammy.
Right.
And so between them, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
Yeah, it also means you did a good job the year before, because if you didn't, they wouldn't have asked you for a year number two. The nuts and bolts of this conference, Sandy is taking us with the big picture, but a lot of people want to know, okay, well, if I want to go, why should I want to go? And you're involved with the sessions, the speakers, trying to recruit people. What's that list of people that's going to attract people?
Well, let me just say this, Chuck, from the outset. First of all, this conference is built from the ground up.
Okay.
And so we have a very inclusive group of program committee members. James Chapman, for example, young entrepreneur who's incubating his own company here. Rico Razzo, who worked in the mayor's office, is well known throughout the city, particularly in Southwest Detroit. And there are 4 or 5 other program committee members who work almost 8-9 months in advance of the conference, pulling together what we think should be the theme. And so, as Sandy, I think, touched upon, the theme is this decade coming forward. And so once the program committee's together and they have themes, then we try to go get people to fill the theme. So we're very happy this year, to be geographically inclusive. David Coulter is going to participate, the Oakland County Executive. And while this is a Detroit-focused 7 or 8 hour conference, the success of Detroit is reliant upon, in large part, partnership with our region. So it's important that he's there. We have Hill Harper coming.
Okay,
gives us a little pizzazz, a little Hollywood,
and who is invested in this city.
Right. So more important than the fact that he's on multiple TV shows and a phenomenal speaker, Hill is invested in Detroit. He's put his money where his mouth is. He's bought a home here. He's invested in businesses here. And what a lot of people don't know, from a philanthropic standpoint, he's very involved here. So that's really going to be the primary driver, what Hill talks about. And the mayor's going to be with us. And so the mayor always has a different sort of approach in terms of how he delivers his message. You'll remember a very important message on the history of race in Detroit he gave a few years ago at Mackinac. This year he's chosen to do a fireside chat, and I'm lucky enough to be on the other side of the cocktail table, hosting him and conversing with him during that chat. So excited about having him here. And before he drives up to Lansing for the State of the State address, which is the same day, the Lieutenant Governor will join us and make opening remarks. So we've got a diverse group of community leaders, elected officials, entrepreneurs, influencers. It's going to be a phenomenal day.
One thing that I think is important about the Detroit Policy Conference, and I'll have you talk more about it, is the fact that it's easy for people to get to.
It's a more affordable day. I mean, Mackinac obviously is a 3 or 4 day venture. It's travel. You know, you got to figure out how to get a ride up there. You got to book a room.
Right.
All you got to do is drive downtown. Motor City Casino is playing host for us. They're a phenomenal venue. And when you look at Chuck, despite the fact it's less expensive and it's in Detroit and it's downtown, the production value that this and the quality of production that this chamber team executes at this conference is of the same quality in Mackinac.
Leadership Detroit is involved in this as well. Yep. They've put a shout out. Through the years, a whole lot of people have come through that.
Myself included.
Myself included, but you know what? Mine was so long ago, I don't even want to tell people what Leadership Detroit class I was in. But it takes young folks who may be up-and-comers and gets them involved with meeting other people, oftentimes in professions that they have no contact with in their day-to-day work, but they create valuable friendships. That's going to be a key part of this too.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the mix of people that come, I mean, again, if you go back to what I said earlier about there being a diverse group of people on the program committee, from a career perspective, age perspective, then that creates it should create, and it did last year and it's doing it this year, a diverse agenda. Different topics, all important to the city of Detroit. And then when you drop into that, those people that can talk upon the subjects or talk about the subjects, you're going to get diversity from all angles. Age diversity, ethnic diversity, it's very important to the chamber. Inclusion and economic development and inclusion in investing is going to be a big part of what we discussed for this day. And it's going to cause for there to be an environment in which all of these people can mix and mingle together. Not only do we have the on-stage programming, but we have smaller breakout periods which allow people to interact with each other. There's a lunchtime period where people can sit with a box of lunch that's delicious, by the way, and spend time with people perhaps they weren't sitting with during the day. And then afterwards, there's a networking period. So it gives people an opportunity to chit-chat with people that they may not normally see in their day-to-day.
So certainly can be a productive day. Once again, the date is January the 29th. It's a Wednesday. Not too late for people to still register and get involved.
DetroitChamber.com.
All right, very good. Dennis Archer Jr., good seeing you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Best to your parents as well.
My man.
All right, if they're smart, they're probably still down in Florida, right?
They're there.
Yes. I don't blame them. All right, they're telling them to come back about 2 months. It'll be good, real sunny out there. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more Newsmakers in the Spotlight. We hope you have a great week.